And so, hello everybody, this is Dr. K, and I'm here with Mitch Gray, and we are about to go live. If I could find, there we go. I should be going live. There we go, perfect. And I always have to do the double click with LinkedIn, and so I'm gonna drop out of my LinkedIn pages because I don't want there to be an echo, and that sounds good. So Mitch, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. And so it's a Wednesday evening at 6:30 Eastern time, and this is Level Up. And I'm here with Mitch Gray. And we're going to talk about positive affirmation in terms of leading your team. But this is really a piggyback from my last week conversation with Steve Gamlin. And so we talked about positive affirmation and really taking control and taking charge of your individual, either personal or professional life, just by speaking aloud. And that sounds kind of voodoo-ish or kind of silly, but what we're really doing is taking the energy that's in the universe already and manifesting it so that it becomes your reality. And so I actually put this into practice, if you believe it or not, last week. And so let me really kind of talk about what my situation is I'm trying to raise some money. And so I said, I got to raise X number of dollars. And I really wasn't specific into how I wanted to raise it. Really, my thought was, well, if I'm going to raise it, I'm going to work for it. But when I came home Thursday night, and this was the day after Steve and I had spoken on the show, and I had just kind of just speaking aloud throughout the day, kind of, in my car to work, in my car on the way home from work. And an hour after I got home from work, so it's about 6:30 my time, somebody's knocking on my front door. Someone's knocking on my front. And typically at that time of day, it's somebody trying to sell me something. But this time, somebody was trying to buy something from me. So I've got my regular daily driver. It's a Dodge Journey. And so, a putt mobile. And so it gets me to and from where I want to go very economically. But I've got this 1992 F350 sitting, dually, this big old truck, this tank of a truck sitting in my driveway. It's not listed on Craigslist or anything else. I don't have a for sale sign on it, but some guy just knocks on my door and says, "Is that truck for sale?" And I'm thinking to myself, no, but it could be. And as soon as I thought that, I actually spoke those words, no, but it could be. So in a sense, I was kind of taking that energy in the universe and kind of manifesting it into my reality, because in truth, I didn't want to sell the vehicle. It really isn't a vehicle for sale. I do use it for like farming because I have a lot of landscape area and I've got to pull mulch and all the kind of stuff. And anyway, so, but I would have sold it. And so we negotiated down. So first I said, yeah, it's a $10,000 vehicle right there. And he kind of negotiated me down. And I said, I'll go as low as 8,000, only because I've put some work into it. So, he said, I'll go get the money right now. But I think he thought about it because later on in the evening, well, we agreed that he would come over the weekend, like Saturday, we would go to the bank. If he's going to give me $8,000, we're going to go to the bank and I'm going to bank it at that day. Long story short, he never did call me back. So he never did come and want to buy it. But I'm thinking, like, during the day, I was manifesting my reality that I needed to raise some money. And so throughout the energies of the universe, it came to me. I didn't even go out and seek it. It came to me. But then when it came to me, I was kind of making the parameters. I want it this way and not that way. So maybe if I would have said, and this is all hypothetical at this point, if I would have said, yes, it's for sale and this is the amount I'm going to sell it for, without saying no, but I could sell it, because saying no, but puts that negative, that negative energies out. And then maybe that closed off the sale. So I don't know. And so anyway, it was a kind of a really unique experience, which kind of, I was thinking back to our story and your story when, you said you sold your your little car, back in the day and you spoke it aloud. You said, I need $2,500 for this car. And if somebody comes asking for it today, I'm selling it. And so it was just it was really a unique experience for me because I'd never had that kind of experience before. But my thought was, if we can manifest personal and professional reality for one person, can't we do it for more than one person at a time? And that would really come into your league because you are a coach of supervisors, a coach of leaders, and a consultant to leadership and leaders. So how does that look like in your perspective, and when you're coaching somebody to say, hey, we can't just do one at a time, we got to do this as a group? How does that look like? What does it look like? And Mitch, tell me some good stories.
Well, I don't, first of all, great story. I don't know if we have time for me to tell stories. I tend to be a long storyteller. So I will affirm for the people watching, yes, I had a similar experience quite a long time ago, and found found myself in a place of life where I just absolutely needed some money, and I know many people can relate to that. And I had a similar deal. I had, my car that I drove, and I just woke up one morning and I knew how much money I needed for that day. I had to have it. It was one of those seasons of life, and yeah, I just said, if someone offers me this amount of money for this car, I'll take it. And about 6 hours later, someone randomly offered me that exact amount of money for that car, and I took it. And so really, to go back to, and I know Steve pretty well. Steve Gamlin, who you had on last week. He's an amazing guy. There's this idea that, yes, the individual can shift their mindset. I think it was, Zig Ziglar decades ago that kind of coined the phrase, you are what you think. And someone later said, you are what you think you are. There's the old cultural idea in many cultures that teaches the idea, I am, period. I am. And so when you begin tying all those together, what you find is, first of all, the presence of the universe is one thing. It's well-being. Call it love, call it God, call it Allah, whatever you want to term it. The bottom line is the presence of the universe is well-being, B-E-I-N-G. So it's the being of wellness.
Okay.
And that is really what our substance is as humanity. That's really nature's substance, is the full presence of well-being. When we get ourselves in trouble is when we start focusing on what we don't have rather than what we do have. So in other words, when we're tying that to the stories you're telling and what Steve was able to talk about when we go thought and verbalization,
right?
The idea is that we focus on what we do have through gratitude and what is prepared for us through the well-being of the universe, the existential, uncontrollable things that happen in life, like someone knocking on your door, asking to buy a truck that isn't even for sale. And so then at its most simplest form, what that becomes is our task is to focus on the what and the why, not the when and the how.
The what and the why.
So we focus on the what and the why. Why do we want to do something? What is that something we're doing? How does that light us up inside? And I'll tie this into the question you're asking me directly in a second.
Sure.
So why is it that I'm doing it? What is it that I'm doing? How is that aligning with my passion, my fire, my desire, my curiosity, my adventure, my spirit, my mind, my intellect? The when and the how, in other words, the manifestation of those things, is not our business. Some people call that faith. Some people call that expectation. Again, I don't care what you label it. They're just words. The reality is that the universe shows us time and time and time again that the only wish for us is well-being. Our true nature is well-being. So when we come into alignment with our curiosity, desires, talents, skills, passions, etc., we are now functioning within an energy vibrational pool, because we are magnets. Science has shown us that. Medicine has shown us that. We are magnetic beings in a magnetic force field of a universe. That has to do with spirituality, emotionality, and mentality as well. We are attracting to us what we are desiring. And so if I only focus on what I don't have, what I'm going to attract more of is what I don't have from a negative standpoint. When I focus on what I do have, my gratitude, my desires that light me up inside, there's a difference in focusing from a standpoint of lack and focusing from a standpoint of gratitude. Now, what does this have to do with teams? Here's what it has to do with teams.
Can I ask you one question though, before you go
Yes,
into that?
go.
Because what you have to say is really important. But right now it's a matter of thought. So
Yeah.
I can focus on what I don't have. And many of us do. We you know, there's always that keeping up with the Joneses has been part of the American culture at the very least for decades. And so we always look at what we don't have and try to work really hard to then be equal with somebody else. But
Yes.
there's that whole manifestation component. Does it have to be spoken in your experience, or can it simply be
No.
thoughts that say, you know, my life is terrible, my life is bad, I don't have this, I don't have that? The desire might be there, is not the desire. And this may be more of an existential conversation that I don't want to have, at least not today, because I do want to talk about what we do say really does become our reality.
Yeah. So the short answer there is desire is what matters. So once you have a desire, once you have a thought, it exists, whether you verbalize it or not. What verbalization does is it affirms the desire that already exists. It affirms the desire that already exists. So, in other words, I can have a thought, but the thought can eventually become a prison in and of itself because it's just inside of me. Once I verbalize that in some form of communication, that could be speaking, it could be writing, it could be creating. I am now affirming the thought that has only existed internally.
Okay.
When it comes to relationship with universe energy, desire is enough. But what we're discussing here is that verbalization becomes the affirmation for that said thought and desire, which actually relates directly to leadership and teams. How can someone use this for others?
Right.
I have zero control over what you're thinking internally. I have all control on what I invite you into. So in other words, you're going to have to decide as a team member, both individually and as a whole, at what level you're going to participate in the community, in the group, amongst the team. As a leader, my sole responsibility is to facilitate and create a safe space for you to explore that inner dialogue that is taking place. So an easy example of this is you have a team of 10 people and 5 of them are incredibly frustrated with what's happening at work. One of them has the courage to come to you as a leader and say, hey, just so you know, you're about to have a tyranny on your hands because people are really frustrated with what's going on at work.
Right.
So now your sole responsibility as a leader is to create a safe space, an inviting space to where people can now verbalize and affirm the thoughts that are taking place. But if you allow that to continue by avoiding the situation, and they never get to vocalize and affirm their thoughts and desires, it's now combustible. And so now we're talking about energy, we're talking about magnetism, we're talking really, when we get down to it, about attraction, the universal law of attraction. Well, as a leader, you know what you're attracting now, the combustion that is going to happen because you have not created a safe space for that communication and that affirmation of those thoughts and desires.
So, and we know that that combustion, you know, once the pressure builds up, it can't but be released. I mean, you can't continue to hold it down. And so back in my day when I was a mental health professional, um, my peers, we phrase that it's going to come out sideways. And so it's meaning that it's going to come out in a way that you don't want it to come out,
Yes. Yes.
rather than being able to talk about it, being able to express your thoughts, being able to express your feelings. And like you said, we actually used that very phrase. We're going to create a safe place. And
Mhm.
that safe place is everything. That safe place is a physically safe place. Not meaning, pads on the walls or anything, but it's a physically
Right.
safe place. It's an emotionally safe place, right? Meaning that there's going to be no judgment, there's going to be no
Right.
criticism, there's going to be, no negative feedback on that, and it's going to be a mentally safe place. You need
Mhm.
to know, you need to have the experience that what you say, I want to know what you know, I want to hear what you have to say, and then
Right.
we embrace that together. And so that safe place, as you called it, is essential, because without that you don't have the ability to create that dialogue, which is what you want to have.
Yeah.
And I know that from just being a mental health professional. I don't have to be
Yes.
a leadership coach or consultant to have that experience. But in I've learned this over the past 12 months, and even now, so because I've gone through some uh, onboarding training in different in locations, because I'm working some contracts, and every time I go into a contract situation, I have to be onboarded, and they have training, and I haven't been onboarded in quite some time, um, since recently. They have training specifically for bullying and,
Mhm.
these negative spaces that are created in the workplace. And I'm thinking to myself, is that a reality? Are people really
Yeah.
emotionally, physically, mentally bullying other, from, it doesn't necessarily have to be the supervisor to, worker, it could be worker to worker, it could be a peer.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of shocking to me. But I want to get back to so how does that, so what do you do? What does a team leader do to kind of provide that safe place, provide the positive affirmation, to create that environment
Mhm.
that really does produce extraordinary results? And that's really what I wanted to kind of hopefully,
Yeah.
without giving away too much of your secret sauce, is to kind
Yeah.
of share that with people.
No, I love giving away the secret sauce. The first step I was asked a similar question to this a few days ago on another podcast interview, and the first response I always give to that question is the first step a leader has to take is to do some internal reflection. In other words, aligning their expectation, the organization's expectation, with their action. So if we say we are going to provide a safe space for communication, dialogue,
Mm.
um, barriers, challenges, growth, etc. If we say we're going to do that, then as a leader, I have to be the first one in line to actually do so. That means that I have to lead from a place of vulnerability, a place of openness. And it doesn't mean as a leader, again, I know I use this example a lot. I'm not going to be the Michael Scott coming in every day from the office and just airing all of my drama. What it does mean is I'm going to share enough of myself and my story so that people have a connection point to my humanity. Because until I'm able to do that as a leader, it is unfair for me to expect others to do the same. And so if I'm going to be the leader, I have to do exactly that, lead.
Mm.
From there, the second step is truly similarly to what you described in your mental health profession. The next step is to truly create and provide a culture of empowerment through permission. And so not only are we saying we want to hear from you, we're actually providing opportunities for that to take place, to facilitate that communication. One way that I love to do it, and again, this is really for people dealing with smaller teams, but one action that I love is to actually have a meeting It may not be weekly. If you can do it weekly, great, but at minimum monthly, to where you don't talk about work. You don't discuss the frustrations of work. Instead, you come together as a team, as a community, and you ask people, hey, what's the greatest challenge you're facing in life right now? What do you really want to do in life? What's your dream? What's your desire? What's your passion? What's something fun that happened to you this week? What's something you did with your family? So you're asking these questions. And it was interesting. Again, earlier this week, I was on another podcast and we were talking about HR issues and how this host of this podcast actually had a career in corporate HR. And he's like, man, Mitch, I can hear all the HR people cringing when you say that. I said, yeah, but the problem is those HR people are missing the same need and desire. So we can't allow liability and the fear of liability to overtake what truly exists in the workplace. And that is a bunch of humans coming together to get a job done. And if you want that group of humans to do their best at that job, you have to meet them at their place of humanity. And if little Sarah is going through a divorce, or their partner is sick, or they're in financial trouble, do you know what they're not going to perform well at? Their job. Right. And so if I create a culture and an environment that allows discussion and opportunity for support, now all of a sudden Sarah is going to feel empowered and courageous and successful. Do you think she's going to perform well? Yes, every single time. And so this whole fear of liability, we have to throw it out the window. Going back to your onboarding process, my question is, yeah, you're exactly right. That's exactly what I see in businesses. We're going to do all of this onboarding about liability and about what we fear, bullying, et cetera. And we need some of that. But you know what? We need to balance that out. Not only are we going to teach you how not to bully, but we're going to teach you about a culture of empowerment.
But that's not part of the onboarding process. They don't
That's
do
exactly
that
my
piece.
point. That's exactly my point. But that's the place of balance. Yes, we'll discuss why we don't need bullying, but we're going to discuss before all of that is the power of our culture. And I go back to what my granddad told me long ago, and I believe there's so much truth in it. When I was a teenager, my granddad said, Mitchell, which is my real name,
Right,
he said, when you have kids one day, don't worry about teaching them what's wrong. Teach them what's right. And then when they see what's wrong, they'll recognize it right away and make the choice that they should make. And I think that's so apropos for the workplace. We are so hell-bent and led by fear and litigation and liability and insurance policies and all this garbage that we forget the humanity of the whole situation. And here's the fact of the matter, Keith. If we had people that only knew what a healthy culture looked like and functioned within that healthy culture, you know what we wouldn't have to worry about? Litigation, liability, and all that garbage. Because they wouldn't care about what's wrong. They would only function in what's right. Mm-hmm. And so the moral of that story is when I have a team of people and I have reflection as a leader, and I decide I'm going to lead from my humanity and from a place of vulnerability. And then I create a culture and a platform and a permissive, safe space for people to really just simply be human. Revenue will take care of itself. Profits will take care of themselves, and you'll have so little litigation. You'll increase your revenue by 20% just because you don't have any litigation. You don't have to worry about all that stuff because you have an environment that is now functioning within and attracting only positivity. And when those barriers and challenges do come up, now we're much more well equipped to face those head on as a team, as a unit, as a community. And so what's happened in the workplace is we've really got it backwards because some fool drove through McDonald's 20 years ago, opened a hot cup of coffee and spilt it on his lap and sued the pants off of McDonald's and won. Ever since then, everything changed. And now everyone is worried about the hot cup of coffee. At some point, somebody has to look at that dude and go, bro, seriously? Come on.
I think it was a woman.
Well, whoever it was. My point is, and I'm sorry that person burned themselves, but it doesn't take very much smarts to know if I get a boiling cup, but that's how we function now. Because one person, one illegal case We now function that all of our
We
onboarding is
function out
about
of
all of the
fear.
negative, and we can't, at some point, the insanity has to stop. And so back to really where you were going with this conversation, if you want a healthy ecosystem in the workplace, if you want a healthy culture in your workplace,
Mm-hmm.
begin today leading and shaping a culture that is based on positivity, on courage, and on empowerment. If you do those three things, all the other garbage is going to take care of itself. And I honestly get really passionate about that, because as long as you function out of fear, you're going to continue losing great people. You're going to continue crying in your milk because revenue isn't where it's going to be. You're going to continue having to take stress medication. You're going to continue going home at night and complaining and griping and all of that. If you want a life that's great, then do the things I'm telling you to do, because it will simply work. It always it's not new to me, man. This is stuff that's just, I mean, people long before me have been teaching this, and many others like Steve, you know, they're teaching this stuff because it just works. It's how human nature is. It's the existence of the universe. So stop fighting against it and go with it.
So, and I know we only have 5 minutes left. Well, my question really was, we put human beings in a work environment, in a building with others. We have to talk about inclusivity, diversity, onboarding, rules, regulations. There's a lot of things that HR professionals have to consider.
Yeah.
And the last thing that seems to be considered is the humanity of it all. And
right. Is the human and human resources, right?
The human and human resources. Yeah, oxymoronic. But it's really difficult. And I use the phrase flip the coin to kind of think of it from the other perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because of making a mistake is going to cost. It's going to cost the business. It's going to cost money. It's going to cost reputation. It's going to cost a lot of different things. And so we have to keep people in boxes. We have to keep people in their doing their little jobs and following their guidelines and rules and regulations, just to be safe.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
no?
and it's not gonna change overnight. And I never make a call to people to sacrifice thoroughness for creating something different than what they exist in
Okay.
currently. So
Okay.
that's why I used the word balance a while ago. The balance to what they feel like they need to show you in that onboarding process is also adding to that onboarding process. And the adding to means I'm going to counterbalance all of that negativity. Because here's the thing about attraction. If you continually only showing negativity and what not to do, that's what people are going to eventually end up doing.
What not to
That's
do.
what people don't understand. Yeah, exactly. Because that's all that's on their mind. So you have to counterbalance that at some point. And so my invitation to leaders is, if you feel like you still need to do all of those things, first of all, I would do as few of them as I legally possibly have to. But if you feel like you need to still do all those things, do them. But give me a counterbalance. Don't leave this taste in my mouth that all you're worried about is me suing the pants off of you. Leave the taste in my mouth that you actually want me to grow as a human being and succeed at this job. And if you do that, the jagged pill is a lot more easy to swallow. It's just like what I tell people in the onboarding process. The first thing that should happen on onboarding is that someone is successful. Not
Sounds like a good start.
legalities.
Yeah.
Not legalities. It is the start. If you want to create success, that is the start. Not legalities, not all that other stuff. That can come.
Right.
But people think the first 7 days have to be all this process of legalities and stuff. That can come in time. Create success for someone. Give someone hope. And if you do that on day one, the jagged pill is so much easier to take. And so it's not that you're eradicating those things. It's that you're giving a counterbalance of hope. And the hope is, wow, this place has an empowering culture. What's funny is if you do that, people are going to actually learn to appreciate the warning signs that you give them. But if all you do is flash the warning signs and give them no hope, then all they're looking for is warning signs. That's insanity at its best. There's a reason people don't stay at your organization. It's because you haven't set them up for success. I call that facilitating success. The word facilitate is from the Latin facil, which means to make the way clear. But most onboarding processes are throwing boulders into the path of success. Human resources should be about one thing: clearing the way, not building
Definitely,
barriers.
that's definitely a new paradigm. Mitch, we're about done for today. It was a great conversation as always. What I would ask is let me go ahead and stop the recording and let's take us offline and debrief. What do you think about that?
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Mitch, so much. And everybody there on either LinkedIn or YouTube, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Mitch Gray. And of course, this is Level Up with Dr. Keith. Have a great day.